Well, as you know, I'm about to head on vacation, so this will be the shortest sermon of your lives. I'm just kidding. I'm actually going to say today everything I would have said had I been here for the next, several months. So it's going to be the longest sermon of your lives. There's a lot of weird stories in the Bible about Jesus and how he interacts with other people. And if you grew up in church, you kind of have some stories rattling around in your head that are kind of left over. This might not be one you remember. It's kind of an interesting interaction that Jesus has. And it makes me wonder, what is belief? Like, what is belief actually? You go to some churches and they say, well, if you came to the front and you said the prayer at some point in your life, you have belief, you're good to go. Have a good life, right? Other people say, well, it's not enough just to say the prayer. You're not even saved until you also get baptized, right? So belief is after you get baptized as well. In other churches, you have to get baptized. You have to have a confession of faith where you maybe responded to an altar call. And there's a few other rules, like maybe you can't listen to hip hop, right? No hip hop, no R-rated movies. Basically, if it's fun or delicious, you can't participate, right? Or if it sounds awesome, you can't listen to it. But what does belief actually mean? And here Jesus has a misunderstanding with his disciples. And that's kind of the question we're going to explore today. So let's kind of get back into the text here. Imagine if Jesus showed up today and he did all the miracles he did back then. And we've already read about a lot of them in Matthew, right? So what has Jesus done in Matthew already? Anybody remember? Build a city? Oh, healed the sick. It was like build a city. I was like, that was his day job for a while, yeah. So I guess he did that. He also healed the sick. Yeah, people that doctors couldn't help, he was able to heal them just on the spot. That's a miracle. If you watch that happen before your eyes, would you be impressed? Would you be inclined to trust this guy? I kind of would. I think I would. What else did he do? Fed the hungry? Yeah, twice. He talks about in this one. Was another one over here? Cast out demons. Have you ever been around someone who's been demon-possessed? You don't feel an overwhelming sense of control, right? You don't feel like you know what to do in that situation. And here Jesus it just fixed it. Just cast the demons out, no problem. I mean, he did other things, like he walked on water, remember that? That was kind of cool. And the people, I had a friend who said, well, how do we know it wasn't a magic trick? Well, he walked out to the sea towards a boat in which fishermen who had worked that sea their whole lives were sitting. It's like, good luck trekking these people who know this lake, I'm seeing the sea. So he walked on water, he healed the sick, he cast out demons, he's done all kinds of amazing things. And in this conversation, you get some people who come up to Jesus and they still don't believe him. They still don't believe him. In fact, they disbelieved him. They couldn't say he didn't do any miracles, right? So what did they say he did miracles by the power of? Earlier in this book, that's right, he says that Satan gave you the power to do these miracles, Jesus. That's why you can do them. Because they couldn't say Jesus hadn't done the miracles, so they said, well, Satan gave you the power to do this. Let's read this passage here. One day the Pharisees and Sadducees came to test Jesus. So Pharisees and Sadducees, those are old school words. Those people don't exist anymore. Kind of think of them as politicians, like congressmen or governors or something. And think of the Pharisees as like Republicans, and think of the Sadducees as Democrats. Like, they're all politicians, they all have powers, they didn't agree on a lot, they kind of squabbled about a bunch of things, but they were the elite. Now imagine all of our senators and stuff, they're also priests. Right? That's the Sadducees and the Pharisees. They're very religious people, they're very spiritual, they're professional clergy, and they're also politicians. And they actually had some legal power. And the Sadducees actually had a lot more legal power than the Pharisees, but for historical reasons, they went away first. But so these two groups of Sadducees and Pharisees, they don't agree on a lot, but they get this bipartisan effort to go and test Jesus. So they cross the aisle, and Jesus is a big enough threat, they think, we got to take this guy out. And it says they went to test Jesus. do they go there curiously wondering who Jesus is, open-minded to find out what the truth about the world is? No. Like, do you think your politicians are giving you open-minded, telling the truth kinds of speeches? No, it's theater, right? And so these people, they go bipartisan, they go to Jesus, and they go to test him. Now, that word test, the last time we heard that in this book was when Satan tests Jesus. Okay, so now the Pharisees are going to test Jesus. What do you think Matthew wants us to think about the Pharisees and Sadducees? White hats or black hats? Black hats. They're the bad cowboys. Do you guys watch Westerns or are that just old Westerns? Okay, I dated myself again. You whippersnappers. So one day the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they came to test Jesus, demanding that he show them a miraculous sign from heaven to prove his authority. Tell me a joke, funny man. They just show up. Dance for us, monkey boy. I mean, they just show up and they're like, do a trick for us. And here's Jesus' response. He says, they say red sky at night means good weather tomorrow. Red sky in the morning means foul weather all days. You know how to interpret the weather signs in the sky, but you don't know how to interpret the signs of the times. So he's saying, look, the way I learned this saying was, what was it? Red sky at night, farmers delight. Red sky in the morning, farmers take warning. Right? Like, that's still a saying that we use. Sailors? Sailors do that too? Okay, cool. You guys are pretty passionate about that. Don't you dare forget about the Navy. I would not dare. Okay, so apparently farmers and sailors, we still have that saying. And that's what Jesus is saying. He's saying, you can look at the sky and understand what the weather is going to be like. Kind of a cool trick. Like, you can look at the sky and you can know what's going on. He goes, you can't even see who I am. Like, you can't even look around and understand the moment you're living in. And that makes total sense because Jesus had just done a bunch of stuff we talked about. And then they said, hey, do one more to prove it. What you find is seeing is not believing, which is weird because I think it would be. I had a friend once, after I became a Christian. I didn't grow up a Christian, I grew up a non-Christian. And so I was familiar with a lot of arguments against Christianity. So I was talking to a friend of mine after I became a Christian. He still wasn't one. And he said, if God loves everybody so much, how come he hides so much? Like, wasn't he to show up, do a miracle in front of everybody? And if he just showed everybody his miraculous power, people couldn't deny him. People accept science. If God entered the realm of science and proved his existence, his existence, then everybody would have to believe him. But God doesn't do that because he doesn't love us. He'd rather leave us in the dark and just grasping desperately for the truth, and he lets everybody be confused. That's the God you worship? I went, yep. It is, because even if he showed up and did a miracle, seeing wouldn't be believing. I was talking to him and I said, okay, you've heard stories about Christians who have experienced God's power in their life, and you don't believe. I said, and remember when you were having marriage problems and you came to me because you thought God might be helpful at the time? And I prayed for you, and your marriage survived. Like, I don't want to brag, but it was kind of right after I started praying, so you know. But I said, your marriage was in trouble, and I prayed for you, and I had other people in my friend group who were Christians. They prayed for you too. And God saved your marriage. And you still don't believe him. Like, you guys were done, and you know it because you had no answers. That's why you turned to God, is because you were desperate, and he helped you. And you still don't see God working in that situation. Seeing is not believing. We think it is, but it's not. And we know this not just from personal experience, but from the scriptures too. Okay, I had to write a bunch of these down so I wouldn't mess them up. Which generation in the Bible saw maybe more miracles than anybody else? Exodus generation. Remember that? So all the Jews are chilling in Egypt. A new Pharaoh comes up. He says, you guys are lame. And he starts, being real mean to them. And then God leads them out of Egypt. Now, before they leave Egypt, there's these 10 plagues. You guys remember that? You guys saw the movie. I mean, you've read the Bible, right? I'm sure you've read the Bible. But there's these 10 plagues, and those all miraculous things happen. Then they leave. Then what happens when they get to this huge body of water and the Egyptian army is coming after them? The Red Sea parts. Convenient? Then they walk through, and the Egyptian army is still after them. So after the Jews get through, and as the Egyptians are crossing over and they're about to get to them, what happens? The sea unparts. That's convenient. And they see all these Egyptian soldiers washed up on the shore, drowned. And they've been delivered. That's kind of a miracle, right? I was reading a scholar trying to explain this away. He said it got really windy and they were actually crossing marshes. And so it dried up the mud in the marshes and then they crossed it. I was like, well, then how did the Egyptian army die? Like, did it get unwindy and it got a little muddy again and then they didn't know what to do? Get out of here. Takes more faith. Anyway. So there was a parting of the Red Sea. There was manna from heaven. Remember? Lots of food miracles. They were hungry and they wanted food because they were starving. So God said what? Manna. He goes, here's some bread. And just bread showed up. And the way they go and pick it up like off the plants in the morning. And then they said, this bread's getting old every day. I want some meat. And so all of a sudden a bunch of quail shows up. Then they go, we're dying of thirst. And then all of a sudden a bunch of water shows up from a rock. Water typically doesn't come directly from a rock. In the Middle East, it typically floods through a wadi, a flash flood after a rain season somewhere else, and the waters come down. But it just comes straight out of this rock. It doesn't come from the mountains. That'd be impressive, wouldn't it? They made camp, these Egyptians, the Jews, when they're in the wilderness, they made camp. And by day, it was a huge cloud of smoke that reached to the heavens, so they knew where to camp. And every time that cloud moved, they were supposed to move with it. And at night, just so they could see, it would turn into a pillar of fire. Every night and every day for decades. Is that a miracle? You think, who could see that and think there's no God, right? I don't know, but they found a way. Here's what else happened. There was some bitter waters, and God made them sweet. So he turned... what's that stuff called? Matcha tea? Matcha? Is that what it's called? I don't get you people who like drinking stuff that tastes like grass and dirt. I know you're trying to be like, my wife does this. Just basic white girls. They don't know what it is. It's like, they like drinking grass and they pretend like they like it. And you can't like it. I refuse. And so what God does is he goes out and there's all these hipster chicks and they're like, oh yeah, we could look, God give us all this matcha stuff. And it was like, no way. So God turns it into chocolate milk, right? And then everybody drinks freely because our God is a God of love and joy and generosity. So he took better waters. He made another time as judgment, a bunch of snakes come into camp and snakes start biting people and they start dying from getting poisoned. And so they take a snake, they put it on a stick, and they all look at the snake on the stick. This is a weird story. It's bizarre. They take a picture of a carving of a snake, put it on a stick. When people look at it, God would protect them from the snakes, and they wouldn't die from the poison. Now, does that sound scientific to you? No. It's called a miracle. It's weird, right? That's not normally how things work. Okay? Victory over the Amalekites. They go to war against this other tribe, and when Moses is holding a stick above his head, they're winning. When his arms get tired and they go low, they start losing. And so he has some people come and help him hold his arms up. Now, is that typical military strategy? Okay, here's what we're going to do to destroy the resistance. Make sure you hold the stick really high, and we'll win. Should we flank them? What should we use for ordnance? Like, don't worry about it. Just focus on the stick. That's what matters. That's our whole strategy, is a stick, right? That's not normal either. That's miraculous stuff going on. I got like 4 or 5 more. I'm going to read this real quick. Okay, their clothing and their sandals didn't wear out the whole time they were in the wilderness. I forgot about that one. That's in Deuteronomy 29:5. The earth swallowed Korah and his followers. Okay, this one's awesome. So there's a rebellion against Moses. This guy named Korah leads it. And they're all there. They're ready to kill Moses and take over the nation in Egypt, the wandering tribe. And this is what happens. The earth opens up, swallows just Korah and his followers, and after they fall in, it closes again. What are the chances? Not very good, right? That's a miracle. Imagine you were standing there saying that, like, what should I do? We just had an election, right? What if you're on the fence? Ooh, who should I vote for? Should I vote for this? Should I vote for that? I don't know. And then the earth opens up and swallows one whole political party and closes. You're like, God, just give me a sign. I think I'm going to vote for them, right? I think I got some direction from the Lord. That's a miraculous thing. By the way, the descendants of the sons of Korah, the descendants of Korah, the guy who led that rebellion, wrote one of the best psalms in the whole Bible. Better is one day in your house. You guys know that song? It's based on the psalm that the sons of Korah wrote, and it's in the Bible. So things can change. So the earth swallowed Korah and his followers. Aaron staffed Bud. Aaron was Moses' brother. Cloud covered the tabernacle. Moses' face when he came down from the mountain was shining with the Shekinah glory of God, and people were scared of him because so much presence of God was on him. Tons of miracles. That's a lot, isn't it? Imagine you go out of Egypt and you're like, dude, our God destroyed all those gods, like 10 of them in a row, undefeated. That was awesome. He parted the Red Sea, then he closed it. He gave us manna. He gave us quail. He gave us water. We didn't like the water. He made it chocolate milk, right? And you're just going through all these amazing things God did. Just all these miracles after miracles after miracles after miracles. And then you go into the land that God says, this is the land I want you to live in. Go get it. They send in 12 spies, and they're going to check out the land. And they're going to say, and they're kind of going in and say, okay, this is how we're going to take it over. Well, when they get there, they change their minds. And when they come back, 10 of the 12 spies say, we shouldn't even go in there. They say, why not? They said, it's a bunch of like 10-foot tall Nordic Vikings there. They didn't say Nordic Vikings. That's not in the Bible. That's me. Okay. But he said they're giants. They're huge. They're going to kill us. If we go to battle with them, they're going to take us all out. There's no way we can do it. After seeing all those miracles, when the chips were down, they still didn't have faith. I mean, the God who killed the gods of Egypt, do you think he's going to have a problem with a few tribes? With some giants? They'd be fine, right? So the 12 come back. 10 of them say there's no way. 2 of them say, God told us we should do this. One guy's name is Joshua and the other guy's name is Caleb. And then everyone decides, they lose heart, and they said, you know what? That whole generation, all those people who'd seen all those miracles, they say, yeah, let's not go in there. If we attack these people, we might die. Let's not do it. You know, they might have had the best theology in the world. Maybe they had all the Bible verses memorized, but when it came down to it, they wouldn't march where God told them to march. That's what belief is, right? Belief is when you march where God tells you to march. You go where God tells you to go. And we all know those people who know all the verses, but their soul is just disgusting. Right? They're not good people. They know good stuff about God, but they don't seem to have, God doesn't seem to have made them good yet. We know those people. That's not belief. That's just being good at Sunday school. All those people lacked faith, even though they saw all those miracles. Seeing is not believing in the scripture. And you see, Pharisees and Sadducees, they came to Jesus after all the miracles he had done. They still didn't believe him. Seeing wasn't believing for them either. I went online because that's where I go to learn things. And I went to, what was it? I went to Quora. You guys know this website? You ask a question and then people answer it and then people vote for the best answer. This one person said, how come people don't believe if they've seen, no, the question was something like, how come people don't believe if they've seen a miracle? The top answer by far with 168 upvotes was this guy who said, oh, I'll tell you why. Imagine a man goes back to caveman days with an iPhone, and he shows them the iPhone. Well, everyone would think that this person's a miraculous miracle worker because they would understand the technology. Now imagine the person with the iPhone tells them that he's God, and he can do all these things. Well, the claim that he's God is separate from all the things he's done. Before they could put faith in the things he says, they'd have to know how he did what he did. And the only reason they don't is because they're a bunch of primitive cavemen. And that got the most upvotes. And for a million reasons, that's one of the stupid answers I've heard my whole life. Will you humor me for a minute? Can I rant about this for just a second? Okay, let me tell you why this is stupid. First of all, nobody actually lives their life based on knowing how things work. All you care is that it does work. Right? Whoa. Does the Lord not want me to preach on this point? Or does he really want me to? Okay. So some of you can rebuild an engine. Some of you can build a TV. Not a lot of you can do both. But most of you use TVs in cars. And honestly, my TV is a mystery. I know I push the button, and sometimes I got to reach over something blocking the little dot thing on the TV, because my TV is old. Now you can just point any direction, but I got to do that. I don't know how it works. It might as well be like a little fairy of light that shoots out and goes inside and utters an incantation in the little dot, which awakens the spirits of the TV. And this little fairy is actually the ruler of the spirits of the TV, and they have to obey its bidding. And the buttons I push on the remote tell the fairy which channel I want, and then it commands the other spirits, and they take it to that channel. And the way they get that channel is from hamsters who speak Latin, It could be anything. I would have no idea. I don't know how my TV works. But I still use it. Everybody lives their life not based on a comprehensive, exhaustive knowledge of the mechanics of how things work. We just want things to work. And that's how we live our life. If my TV's broken, do I keep watching it? No, that changes how I live. Right? Instead, I pray. Or I get a new TV. But how things work doesn't matter to us. It's that they work. Now, some of you are very curious and you like to learn how some things work. It's true. But still, most of your life is lived based on what works, not how it works. And we believe things all the time without knowing how it works. So this guy arguing that we have to know how everything works exhaustively, mechanistically, with linear causality and a methodological naturalism embedded within a scientific method before we can use it, not true. I just want to watch Survivor. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't need to know how the remote works. And that's how most of us live our lives. In fact, we make huge decisions based on not knowing a lot. You didn't marry the person you married based on knowing everything about how they work. Men, let me tell you how women work. That's the punchline, right? Like, that's the joke. Bro, I don't know. We're going to have 25 years married this month. Yeah, awesome, huh? You know how we did it? Me neither. Yeah, I don't know. We just, I didn't die, I guess. Like, we don't know how things work. We just care that they do. And we make huge decisions in life without a lot of information. Because we want things to work, we don't care how they work. So psychologically, it doesn't work. Secondly, as David Hume pointed out a long time ago, this is a little nerdier, but as David Hume pointed out a long time ago, just because you see a sequence of events doesn't mean you're actually establishing causality. All it means you're actually establishing is correlation. And what you're observing isn't true mechanistic causality at its deepest level. What you're observing is a pattern over time, and when it becomes regular enough, you call it a rule or a law or a theory. So science actually doesn't explain causation. What it explains is patterns that we observe. And this is true, like Newtonian physics works to a certain level, doesn't it? But you get to Planck space and it all gets messed up, right? And so you got to adopt a whole new physics. And so that was pretty nerdy, but it's true. So this guy's explanation is if Jesus showed up today and did a bunch of miracles in front of me with his advanced spiritual iPhone, I would have to know how everything works before I could put my faith in him. What's going to convince this guy? Nothing. So the most upvoted answer on this website about how faith and sight interact is based on bad philosophical assumptions, bad psychology, and it's also based on the answer of a person who wouldn't believe no matter what. You will never know how things work like God knows how things work, right? Like I'm half Asian, which means I'm half good at math. But me knowing a little math, and I'm half really bad at math, actually. But the math I know doesn't put me on the same level as the same person who invented math, right? I'm like, okay, here's this abstract language with which I can describe patterns I observe in the cosmos. That doesn't make me the guy who says, you know what, I think I'm going to make a cosmos in 6 days. That's going to be my week. I'm going to invent the structure of reality. I'm going to interpenetrate everything in existence with my presence, and then I'm going to decide its structure. And later, some guy is going to learn some things about how I put some things together. Not much, though, because he's only half Asian. So seeing is not believing. And again, my friend, I prayed for his wedding to get healed, and it got healed, and he still didn't believe. I've had people that we've prayed for them, specific prayers. And they came to God because they wanted help. And God helped them in that specific way. And there's no faith to speak of for it. Seeing is not believing. But why isn't it? Because doesn't it seem like it should be? It seems like seeing should convince you. But it doesn't. Why not? Well, let's kick it. Okay. We're going to do psychology here. It's going to be awesome. Humans only see what they're looking for. Humans only see what we're looking for. And I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to talk about it a long time here. But if I asked you how many men are sitting in this room, when you looked around, you start counting the men, right? Because that's what you're looking for. That's what you're paying attention to. You would have no idea how many women are sitting here or how many children. Right? And you ever send a kid to look for something? I don't know why we torture ourselves like this. Like, Dad, I looked. I'm like, yeah, okay, you looked. They're just bad at looking for stuff. And they get distracted so fast, they can't stay focused on the things they're supposed to be looking for. And we only find what we're looking for, and other things actually don't present themselves to our attention, and so they don't exist. Imagine playing Where's Waldo, but they never told you what Waldo looked like, or they lied to you in terms of what Waldo looks like. You'd be looking for something else, right? And we see this in relationships. This is a very practical thing. Remember the honeymoon phase where you fell in love with your spouse and everything was perfect, everything they said was hilarious, right? They were just always going to be there for you. They were wonderful. And then after day 3, you're like, I don't know, man. You know, you think, oh, that's not good. Like, he farts in his sleep a lot. Like, that seems medically an issue, right? You just learn things about the other person, and it brings them down to human level. Well, sometimes you get so discouraged with a person that you start seeing everything they do in a negative light. You get this permanent attitude of contempt for them. Spouses do it with each other, and you've done this to people you just don't like. There's people there's that Italian saying I say, if you like somebody, they can spill their spaghetti in your lap and you'll laugh it off. If you don't like somebody, the way they hold a fork makes you furious. Right? And so once you start looking for negative things in another person's life, guess what you're going to find? The negative. And guess what you're not going to see? The positive. You know, maybe they're a self-absorbed loser. Maybe you're just crazy ungrateful too, because you're not looking for the right things. It's probably a combination of both, because life's complicated. But we only find those things that we're looking for. You guys with me on that? And it's funny, there's this experiment where they tell people, count how many times this team passes the basketball. It's a video. You can find it on YouTube's probably, the YouTuberama. So if you go there, how many times are they passing the basketball? And what they do is they have somebody walk through with a bear costume on, and they walk through the middle of the stage, they do this, and then they turn and they walk the rest of the way off. Half of the people don't even see that bear. And it's because they're focused on the ball. The bear actually doesn't exist to them. You guys got me? Okay, so we only find what we're looking for. Here's the catch. How did I write this down? Yeah, that's good. I put, humans don't look for belief. We look for advantages. That's how human psychology works. We're not truth-seeking animals. Okay, you think you are. That's part of the delusion, but you're not. Humans don't seek belief, we seek advantages. Here's an example. What if, you guys see that show Beast Games? Okay, it's just a game show where you compete for stuff. Let's say we're playing Kenji games today. Okay, Kenji games today. Whoever wins the Kenji games today is going to win $5 million. This is hypothetical. Just saying. You're going to $5 million. Okay. The first person to tell me how many chairs are in this room wins $5 million. Go. Right? You're just looking. Now, what if at the end of this competition I said, okay, here's the real question, because that was the trick. How many fans are in the ceiling of the room? Don't look up. Nobody look up. I heard 8. I heard 6. See, you're not sure, right? And it's like your lifelong friend. Does he have a mustache? Does he have it? I'm not too sure right now. It's because there's just things you pay attention to. Now, is it advantageous for you to know how many chairs are in this room? No. Did it become advantageous to you once you were going to get a $5 million prize? Yes. Once $5 million is on the line, you start paying attention to the chairs because it was advantageous to you. Okay, so this is how humans work. We walk into a room, we don't see the room. When we walk into the room, there's things we want. There's goals we have. Okay? I walk into the room with the goals I already have, and what I see in the room is a bunch of things that can either give me advantages toward accomplishing the goal, or they're irrelevant. In other words, we see the whole universe as a collection of tools, and we're trying to figure out which ones are useful for us. And some people treat other people this way. You ever go clubbing? I mean, you didn't because you're Christian, but let's say you had a friend who went clubbing once, and he's single, and he's looking for a wife, right? At the club. Not the best strategy, but that's what he's doing. So he goes to the club, and he's looking for a wife. He's reading the room based on what can get him that goal. And he's presenting himself based on what can get him that goal, right? He's not in there thinking, okay, there's 100 souls in this room, and they all need the Lord. And what I want to do is be open and objectively see the situation as it is. He's like, nope, she's fine. She's fine. Out of my league. She's fine, right? That's kind of what they're thinking. And it's all relates to their goals. That's how humans operate basically 24/7. We always have goals. Why do you get frustrated with your spouse sometimes? Because sometimes they mess with your goals, right? Having another person in your house with other interests than your own, it's annoying sometimes. By the way, that's a big part of the point. Like, you're supposed to learn to live outside of yourself. And if you just switch relationships every time it's too annoying, you'll never get the growth out of it. And so you'll just be like Billy Madison repeating the grade forever. But we even see people as things that can help our goals or not. And I'll be honest, the pastor, we do this. Like pastors, we do this sometimes. Like, we're passionate about our churches. We want our churches to help people to change the world. But sometimes we get this vision of what a church should be like. And we usually collect it from all the books we read or the conference we just went to. So we come home and we think, okay, I need this, 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 and this, and this. It's like I'm playing Warhammer 40K. Like, this is what I need here and there and there and there. And I think, I'm so glad somebody got that. Dude, I'm glad you're here, Emmett. Appreciate you, brother. I was so sure I was alone on that. So anyway, one cool person here. So it's like you're playing a game, and you're just thinking, okay, and then you come home and you think, okay, this person could do this. This person, and you start seeing people as a means to an end to accomplish ministry, and instead of seeing people as a ministry. This happens sometimes. And sometimes we treat other humans like they're things that are supposed to give us advantages. like happiness, like peace of mind, right? Sometimes money, like if you're a gold digger or something. Like it could be anything. But we treat humans as tools as well. So the reason seeing is not believing is because the things that help us believe, a lot of times we're not seeing them because we're not even looking for them. So they basically don't exist because they don't present themselves to our attention because they're not useful to us. And so my friend who was an atheist, you know who wasn't useful to him? God wasn't useful to him until his marriage was almost over. Then he got real spiritual real fast. Why? Because God was useful now. What happened after the marriage seemed like it was saved? Did he have faith after that? No. Seeing wasn't believing for him. He didn't need the tool anymore. So that's why all these people sitting in front of Jesus, even though he's done amazing things, they can't see what's right under their noses. Because seeing's not believing, because they had different goals. Was their goal there to find the truth or to figure out who Jesus was honestly? No, their goal was to test him and discredit him. And to discredit Jesus, they had to discredit his miracles. And to discredit his miracles, they said that Satan did it. Where am I even at with my notes there? Yeah, I'm pretty much there. Did that. Okay, 2 more examples I want to talk about this. No, let's do one more. Yeah, one more. I have some friends who are deconstructing their faith. Do you guys know what that means? So deconstruction is when you take a building apart, right? So when they're deconstructing their faith, that's when they're taking their faith apart. And you know, we like to think of faith as a blessing to everybody, but for some people, their faith is a curse, actually. Their spiritual life is a burden. Like maybe they had a spiritual authority that hurt them really bad. Maybe their church was super judgmental when they grew up. So when they think of God, a lot of times they don't have warm, positive, hopeful feelings. When they think of God, they actually feel depressed, they feel burdened, and their spiritual life is hard for them, which is terrible, isn't it? But it happens. And some of us that have those seasons where church, the Bible, praying, the idea of God, those things were more of a burden to us than a blessing. We have those seasons sometimes. And so what some people do is to deal with that burden, to deal with that hard season, they unburden themselves by getting rid of their faith. And so they read lots of deconstruction literature, they go to deconstruction websites, they go to blogs. And what's funny is I was talking to a friend of mine and I said, why do you call it that? Why do you call it deconstruction? And they said, well, because, you know, I think there's lots of holes in the Bible. I think there's lots of things that show that Christianity is not true. And I just think my life would be better without all these delusions. And I said, okay, so what do you got so far? Like, why do you think it's not true so far? I'm like, well, I don't have specific stuff yet, but that's why I'm going on this journey. It's because I'm going to deconstruct my faith and I want to figure things out. And I said, you poo-poo face. By saying that they're deconstructing, they're telling me what their goal already is. Right? Their goal is to tear down their faith. And so what are they going to do with everything they read and everything they encounter? What are they going to see? And they're going to see things that help them tear down their faith. So they could come to this church and they could say, oh, the music. Music was too polished and too good. They're all fakes up there. They're just fakes. Or I'm just waiting for the pastor to bring up money. Look at his fly shoes. Those things have been clearly polished. That's a bad example. I need to polish these shoes. But anyway, they say, look how rich the pastor is. Look what he's up to, you know, and they can find reasons for a church to be the burden. But that's what they're looking for. Oh, they could come here and see 175 people who are taking time out of their life to try to figure out how to connect with God because they want a more meaningful life and they want to learn how to help other people more. But that's not what they see, right? They see what they want to see. So I said, when you say deconstruction, you tell me what your goal is, so you tell me what you're already wanting to do. And see, I have questions about my faith. You know that doubt, just accept it. Doubt is a natural part of your existence. And by doubt, I mean, there's a difference between doubt and disbelief. Okay, doubt is when you're confused. And if you're intelligent, you should be confused a lot. Because one, it's a confusing world, and two, God is very, 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 very beyond your mind. Like he's bigger than your brain. So if you could fit the ocean into a cup, you could fit God into your brain. And that's why I tell people, if you have Jesus figured out, you're not talking about the same guy I'm talking about. Trust me. Like if God fits in your pocket, we're talking about different people. God is so big, of course there's going to be things you don't understand. You know, my struggle when I was a new Christian is, why does God allow suffering? Why does God hide himself? Why does the Bible say this here? How come the Bible talks about that? How come Christians do this? You're supposed to have doubt because the world's confusing. Just accept it. It's part of life. However, you shouldn't have disbelief. And for deconstructionists, the goal is disbelief. And I tell people, yeah, I have doubts, but I'm not deconstructing my faith because that's not my goal. And I'm not stealing my faith and making it a fortress and ignoring all my questions because that's not my goal. I'm just always remodeling my house. I'm always remodeling my faith. I'm always trying to learn and grow and figure out questions I don't have answers to. And sometimes I figure it out, sometimes I don't. But what's the real issue in this passage? Because at the end, he says, the disciples, not the sharpest tools in the shed, right? They go on this trip, and Jesus says, beware the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees. They said, great, Jesus is mad because we didn't bring a sandwich. That's not what he's talking about. Like we just read about his conflict with them. And he tells them they're dumb, and then he explains himself, and he says, no, I'm saying beware of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. That's what you need to beware of. Now, what does beware mean? Be wary, right? Don't go into that shed because I just locked a grizzly bear in there. Beware, right? Beware. This chihuahua thinks it's a grizzly bear, right? Like they all do. Actually, chihuahuas also think they're dogs. Did you know that? They don't know they're just mean little rats. It's in the Bible. So when Jesus tells his disciples to beware of the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees, they didn't agree on a lot, remember? They're different sides of the aisle. So the Pharisees believed in the resurrection, they believed in angels. The Sadducees didn't believe in the resurrection, they didn't believe in angels. The Pharisees believed in a bunch of rules and a bunch of extra books in the Bible. The Sadducees liked to focus more on the temple. They didn't agree with all this oral tradition. They only liked the first 5 books of the Bible. They didn't like the rest. They didn't agree on a lot. So what are we bewaring of? What's the thing they agreed on? They agreed that Jesus is a joke and you shouldn't believe him. They agreed in disbelief of Jesus, that you shouldn't believe in Jesus. And that's what the disciples are supposed to be aware of and not believe in. And honestly, that's what we're supposed to be aware of and not believe in. Okay, let me talk about doubt, then we'll bring this home for just a second. I'm going to talk about doubt for a quick minute. I'm going to talk about how to have a lot of belief, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, let me see my notes here. Did that. Did that. That was a really good part. Okay, so doubt. Doubt's a fact of life, so explore the doubts you can, but then let the rest go. Here's what I ask myself. Now that I'm a Christian, because when I became a Christian, one of the last things I wanted to do was stay a Christian. I came from a very non-Christian background. I didn't particularly like Christians or church people. There's a lot of struggles I had with the Bible. It was a tricky road for me in the beginning of my faith. And so if I could find a back door, I kind of wanted to. So I thought, man, there's lots of things I don't understand. But then I thought about this. Well, if I stop being a Christian, does that mean I'm suddenly going to understand everything? Like, no, I think I'll have a doubt whether I'm a Christian or not. And I want answers. I want to know how to make that fan stop squeaking. Right? There's things I don't understand in this world. We just suffer well through them. We persevere. And God blesses us on the other side. But if you can explore your doubts, explore them. I'll tell you there's a lot more answers in the world than you think there are. God actually makes a lot of sense. But you won't figure out all your doubts just because some of you won't have the brain power. Like all of us don't have the brain power. Some of you won't have the time. Like some of you have real jobs and like families you got to spend time on. So you don't have time to read 10 philosophy books on Hume's argument against miracles and, conversations about that. So explore the doubts you have, sure, but you're going to have to let a lot of them go, whether you're a Christian or not. That's just the fact that you exist. So explore your doubts, but don't let your doubt turn into disbelief. You can ask God all the questions you want, and the Psalms, they do this all the time. It doesn't hurt his feelings at all. He's fine. But disbelief, that's when you stop trusting God. And by the way, this isn't when you stop believing in the penal substitutionary of atonement. This is when Jesus tells you to go somewhere you don't go. That's what disbelief is. I'm not impressed if you sound smart in Sunday school. I want to know that you know how to surrender and follow Jesus. That you know how to love your enemies, that you know how to forgive, that you know how to care for people who will never be able to repay you back. Right? That's where the rubber meets the road. So don't let doubt turn into disbelief. And the other thing is that don't dwell on doubt. Sometimes there's a question you can't figure out, and it'll take over your life. And if you dwell in it too much, the doubt can become disbelief. It's like you water the grass, and you think by sitting there watching it, it'll grow faster. Just go miniature golfing and chill for a while and come back, and the grass will be taller when you get back. Like, don't sit there and watch it. So don't sit there and stare at your doubts all the time. Do what you can with them. Okay, that's how you handle doubt. Let me close up by talking about how do you strengthen belief, right? A lot of us want to have more faith, and we're not really happy with our connection to God. Like, we want a stronger connection with God. We want faith to be more important to more aspects of our life, and we don't want to become those Christians that are all talk and no walk. So here's some things I wrote down for ideas. First thing is, by our nature, we see advantages, right? We don't see what's actually there. Here's what's crazy about Jesus. He always saw what was there. We just read a story about this woman who went to Jesus, and she begged him to heal her daughter. And you know what the disciples saw? A super, super annoying, heathen, Gentile, pagan woman. You know what Jesus saw? He saw her. He saw her in her need. And it's crazy to me. Jesus always does this. Whoever's in front of him, he always sees that person. He's never thinking, okay, are they going to help out my mission? Are they going to help out my ministry? I wonder if they'd be good for children's ministry director. Probably not, but we need somebody. I wonder if they'd be good enough for now, right? We don't see that happen at all. He sees the person who's there. And so if we want to be like Jesus, we need to learn to love people and to use things. What we tend to do is we tend to use people and love things. Right? We need to see people not as things, but as people. Look, I know your spouse is a moron and you're not happy with them right now and they're hard to live with. I know they're frustrating your goals. I know you see how frustrating they are. My question now is, do you see them? Or do you just see them in relation to your own goals? Right? Matt fixed the fan. Hey. You're in good hands while I'm gone, church. Gets things done. So don't love things and use people. Love people. And start seeing people. And it's crazy. Once you start existing in the world without observing everything in reference to yourself, it's crazy how love changes. That's what love is. Love was when you forget yourself. Now, I know some of your lawyers are going, what about self-care? What about this? What about that? Okay, I'll give that to you. But give me the rest, okay? Like if you're always thinking people on a self-absorbed basis in terms of how they make you feel or how they get you close to your goals or how what you think of how the world should be, you're not seeing the person, and you can't be there with that person, and you can't show them the love of God and love them. This is why Jesus does so much ministry to people that cannot pay him back. That's why the church historically has engaged in so many ministries where people can't pay us back. You know why I do soup kitchens to homeless people? Because their bank accounts are broke. They're not going to give us soup back. Why do we do that? Because we see them and we know they're hungry and they like soup. And if we leave it up to the atheists, they're just going to give them bowls full of matcha tea. Unacceptable. So if you want to increase your belief, you need to learn to love. And learning to love means letting go of that frantic neuroticism where you're fighting tooth and claw to try and build things in the way you think they should be and accomplish your own goals. And you know what it really means? Not only can you not use people, it means you try not to use God either. You know why I came to Jesus in the first place? It's because I was selfish. Like the preacher was preaching and God spoke to me and I knew something was missing. And so I became a Christian. And then after I was a Christian a while, there was still stuff missing. I was like, I need a wife, but I don't know what I'm doing. I need a Christian wife. So here's your next job, God. Get me a Christian wife. Then he got me a Christian wife. And I think, okay, I got a Christian wife. Now I need a Christian marriage. Okay, Lord, give me a Christian marriage. That's what you're going to help me with now. Then we started popping out kids, right? Okay, now I want Christian kids. And then there's seasons where like, God, I don't like my kids or my marriage. Fix them so I can like them again. That's your next job, right? Oh, Lord, I could serve you so well if I just had this and this and that. So now that you know the plan, and it's a good one, go ahead and get to it. And it's crazy how we use God as an advantage. Some of you don't love the giver. You really love the gift, though. And if you want your belief to grow, I'm telling you, there's nothing better than seeing the giver more than the gifts. When you learn to just be in the presence of God and just accept his grace and his love for you, and there's no agenda, and you just get to see the beauty of this thing that made you on purpose, this person and all the things he's done, and you just enjoy the free love he's giving you, that will change your spiritual life. Because here's what might actually happen. You might actually learn to like God. And if you learn to like God, you actually might spend more time with him. And if you spend more time with him, you might become like him. So enjoy God. I think I have one more thing I want to say here. Why did Jesus die on the cross? And it's weird, because let's pretend Jesus was just human. He wasn't God. He was just some guy, and he goes to the cross, and he dies. What advantage is there in that? Like, what advantage would there be to God becoming a man and dying on the cross? Jesus didn't die on the cross to make you more useful to him. He died on the cross because he loves you. And sacrifices is what people do for people they love. Ask any parent to their child, you've made sacrifices. Is it because your kids could pay you back? Don't hold your breath. It's because you love them. And when Jesus died on the cross, sometimes we get in this interactional, reciprocal, kind of transactional space where we're like, okay, God died on the cross. Now I'm going to give him back this, this, and this, and this, and hopefully he'll give me this, and this, and this. We kind of get these unspoken arrangements with God. And we think, okay, if we do this, then if I'm a Christian, I'll have a Christian marriage. It'll be perfect. It'll be fine. No problems ever. Christian kids, they'll be filled with the Holy Spirit from birth, and they'll just always quote Scripture. And, you just go down the line and you think, okay, if I do transactions with God, this is how it'll be. But can I state the obvious? God doesn't need you. Like, what can you offer him? What ministry can you get done that God can't do by himself? Like, do you know how to make water come from a rock? Do you know how to establish a pillar of fire and smoke in the desert? Like, does he need your strength or your intelligence? He doesn't need us. And you know, those of us in ministry, if you're going into ministry, or you've been in ministry, he doesn't need you either. Why are you so urgent about everything? You never existed because you were useful to God. You exist because he willed you to exist, because he wanted you to exist so he could love you. God wanted you to exist just so he could love you. Now, should we give him everything back? Of course. Does he need it? No. And I think when Jesus died on the cross, the suffering is unspeakable that he went through. Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally. His friends had abandoned him. He felt the weight of sin upon him. He had gotten physically just mauled. And he's literally nailed to a cross, and his body weight's hanging off of these nails. And he's up on the cross. And at any point, he can just call a whole legion of angels to come down and fix everything. And people are mocking him and making fun of him. And he willfully, voluntarily decides to stay on that cross until he's dead. Why? The clearest way to show somebody you love them is with blood, sweat, and tears. And that's what Jesus was showing us on the cross, is that God loves us. That sin is terrible, sin is horrible, there's wrath for it, there's punishment for it, but he absorbed that. And he showed us that he loved us. And so why does he include us in ministry now? Because he wants us to know his joy. I guess what I'm saying is, God's not using you. Because I'll be honest, we have no use for him. Like his goals he could accomplish by himself. It's the fact that you're you and that you exist. That's the goal, is the love itself. And some of you have gotten this cycle with God where you're kind of making bargains with him, or you're thinking maybe he's punishing you because you haven't been good enough, and you're trying to figure all this stuff out. The cross tells us it's all free. You hear me, church? God's love is free. It's freely offered. It's freely given. It was always there. That was the display of it and the display of the power of it, because not only dying on the cross does he show us his love, but he also overcomes evil, subverts the created order as it exists, and enables us to live lives where we're actually living in love and not some kind of self-absorbed perspective where we're trying to use everything for our own benefit, even if we're smart enough to make it look like it's charity. I read this passage, and it's kind of weird because Jesus gets in this argument with these guys, and you think, man, they should believe because of all these miracles. Isn't it obvious? Well, it's not if you're not looking for it. And I want you to look for the love of God in your life, because I'm telling you, it's there, all over the place. God loves you so much. And if you can get to the part in your spiritual life where you're not using God anymore, but you're enjoying him and you're loving him, that's how your belief increases. Because he can ask me to walk anywhere. And if I'm not following Jesus because of personal benefit, there's no math to do. I just follow the person I trust, the person I believe in, the person I love. And I don't have to sit there and think, well, I kind of want this. Should I really obey God in this area because it conflicts with this goal? Because your goals are done. You just walk in love with God, and then you're ready to go wherever he takes you. And the freedom of a life where you're not self-obsessed with trying to make everything the way you want it, but you just get to follow Jesus, I'm telling you, it's much better. It's much better. You'll be way stronger. You'll suffer better. You'll have a much more meaningful life. And the more you learn about love, the more you'll experience it. It's just better. So beware of disbelief, church. Because Satan wants to take your faith. And sometimes we let him have little pieces of it. Not after today, right? After today, we follow Jesus, we trust in Jesus, we do the things in our life that'll help us love Jesus more, and we obey Jesus. And all the things we realize that we're fighting for, we put down all those battles so we have the energy to do the things that really matter. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I pray that you would increase our faith. Forgive us for our disbelief, and forgive us for using you like you're some kind of advantage or tool or benefit to us. But thank you for Jesus' death on the cross, which showed us that you love us and that you care for us. That you already love us. That you already care for us. Lord, I pray for every soul in this room and every person in this room, that you would help them to know your love more, to know your grace more, and that their belief would grow. Lord, we give all of our doubts and frustrations about this world to you, but we also give you ourselves and our heart, and we trust you and we believe in you. So I pray supernatural blessing on everyone in this room, and that their faith will grow. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Okay, communion guys are coming forward. I'm going to explain this real quick.